Good morning and Shabbat Shalom, and welcome once again to Rabbi Hillel Silverman's Drasha on Parshat HaShavua. Rabbi Silverman, it's great to have you here. Shabbat Shalom, welcome.
Shabbat Shalom. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So this Shabbos we're reading Parshat Pinchas. Tell us all about Parshat Pinchas, please.
Pinchas is coming to the end of the book of Bamidbar, and the children of Israel have been in the wilderness for almost 40 years, and they are preparing to cross over into the Holy Land. Today, we read that God brings Moses to Mount Nebo, and he shows him from the mountaintop the land of Israel, which of course Moses will not cross over. Last week we read of the death of Miriam and the death of Aaron, and we will be discussing this morning Miriam, Aaron, and Moses, the sister and the two brothers. Miriam is a very interesting personality. She only appears 3 times in the Torah. The first time is at the Nile River. Her mother has placed her there because her little baby brother Moses is in a tevaz, in an ark, escaping from the anger of Pharaoh. Pharaoh has decreed that all Jewish boys will be killed, and so to preserve the life of her son, the mother places Moses in the Nile. And by his side stands his sister Miriam. She is to watch, she is to protect, she is to find out what happens. And of course, you know the story. The daughter of Pharaoh, the princess, who is bathing in the Nile together with her entourage of women, finds him, discovers him, knows that he is a Hebrew baby, and she brings him to the palace to raise him. Of course, that's not the end of Miriam's deed of protection. Now she goes to the princess and she says to her, would you like a woman to care for this little baby? She probably said to her, oh, do I have a babysitter for you? And so Moses is raised in the palace and is not deprived of his Jewish values. Had it not been for the fact that his mother would be with him, he would have been part of the Egyptian culture. So that's the first time that Miriam appears in the Torah. The second time is at the Red Sea, the crossing of the Red Sea. They cross over in safety. Moses Az Yashir has a song of victory, and then Miriam leads a victory dance with drums and with musical instruments. And the rabbis say, a drum and musical instruments? Where did she get them from? Truly, there was no music store on the other side of the Nile River. And so they say she had the faith that they would cross the Red Sea in safety, and she brought the musical instruments with her. So that is number 2. Number 3 and final time is later in the story when she indulges in gossip and slander with her brother Aaron about Moses, about Moses's wife, Tzipporah Hakushite, and either she says that she was of the tribe of Cushi or she was an Ethiopian. In any event, the penalty for slander or for gossip is leprosy, and she was stricken with leprosy. Mitzora, Motzi Shem Ra. The leper connotes the fact that he has sinned in the sin of gossip and slander. And so that's the final time, the third time that Miriam appears in the Torah. Her brother Aaron now, of course, he appears at the burning bush, and Moses is told at the burning bush that he will go to Pharaoh and tell him to let his people go. And of course, Moses is tongue-tied, and he says, "But I'm not able to speak." And God says to him, "Your brother will be your pet. Your brother will be your prophet. He will speak for you." And so Aaron goes with Moses to the Red Sea, to the crossing of the sea, to the wilderness, and next the golden calf, when Moses receives the Ten Commandments and he tarries returning home. The Hebrew is Boshesh. He's a little late. And the rabbis say the word is Boshesh, 6 hours late, traveling time, let's say. And so the people give up hope that he will return, and they say to Aaron, "Make new gods for us who took us out of Egypt." And so uh, uh, he makes the god. Actually, the rabbis try to whitewash Aaron, and they say in reality he was stalling the people. He told them to throw into the fire the women's jewelry, uh, which they do, and then out came the calf, the yatzah. Well, Moses comes back furious, and he castigates and punishes the people. And as a loving brother, what does he say to Moses? He said, "Ma asu ha'am." What did the people do to you, poor Aaron, that you sinned by making a golden calf? And so the rest of the Torah is replete with a delineation of the sacrifices which Aaron, the high priest, is to offer, how they are arranged, what the animals are, when they are to be offered. And he is also officiating at the Mishkan. He is to construct the portable tabernacle that appeared in the wilderness. And so a little bit later, Aaron dedicates it. His career is not over. He suffers with Moses every time the people are attacked, every time the people complain. His two precious sons, Nadav and Avihu, are put to a very strange death because they offered a strange fire. Moses commissions his third son, Eliezer, to be the high priest. He puts his garments upon him, and then last week we read that he passes away. So Miriam has passed away, and Aaron has passed away, and now we consider the third member of this family, the one sister and the two brothers. Moses begins his career as a little baby in an ark on the Nile River. He returns to the palace, and he is raised by his own mother. He leaves the palace probably in his maybe 20s, 30s, and he sees an Egyptian on the point of slaying a Hebrew. And he kills the Hebrew. As you know the story, he runs to the wilderness. At the burning bush, he is confronted by God. He is told by God that he has a mission to deliver the children of Israel, and he gives God four excuses, and he returns to Pharaoh, and he tells Pharaoh that he must let his people go, and Pharaoh, of course, is incensed and decides to decrease the supply of straw, which is used for the construction of the pyramids. And then come the plagues, and of course, all of Aaron's uh, career is turmoil and wars and corruption. He goes to the Red Sea, and again, the children of Israel say, "We'll never make it. We would like to go back to Egypt." And the Midrash tells us that there were four different groups of people at the Red Sea complaining. One group said, "Let's return to Egypt. It's better to live there and be free." Another group says, "We will kill ourselves." Another says, "We will fight." And a third one says, "We will give them competition." As soon as they cross the Red Sea, what happens? The children of Israel are attacked by a foreign tribe, Amalek. and the people are incensed. They're disheartened. Let us go back to Egypt where we had security. And right through the next 40 years, we have the same story. Foreign nations attack Israel, or they are on the verge of starvation, or they have no water, and they complain, and Moses doesn't know what to do. And then suddenly the people are victorious. And we have another passage which is quite interesting, in which Jethro, the father-in-law of Moses, comes to visit him. And they have a long conversation, very interesting conversation, of father-in-law and son-in-law. And Moses tells Jethro all of the miracles that God has wrought for them. And then Jethro tells my son-in-law, you are really incapable of working from morning to night, judging the people. You must appoint a number of the children of Israel to serve as judges, and they will take care of the minor matters so that you will be spared to judge the major matter. Very interesting example of a father-in-law and of a son-in-law. And so we read the next 40 years of the problems of Moses with foreign nations that attack the Jewish people. The people want to return to Egypt. The people are unhappy. They're on the verge of starving. You have the story of Korach, who is a man who rebels against Moses. You have a long story of the snakes and the Chashim and how they put to death a number of the children of Israel who are finally saved. We have the story of the scouts who come back with an evil report. And then last week, we had the story of the rock. The people are on the verge of dying of thirst. And the Lord tells Moses, speak to the rock and water will come forth. Moses loses his temper. Instead of speaking to the rock, he takes his staff and he smites the rock twice. And for this, he is punished. And God says to him, because you did not sanctify me, you disobeyed my commandment, you will not be able to cross into the Holy Land. And then we have the story of Og and Dizon and then Balak. And finally, last week we read in the Torah, Moses is taken, as he is this week in the Torah, to Mount Nebo. He is shown the Holy Land. He is told he will not be able to enter. He approached the Holy Land, but he can see it, he can feel it, he can smell it, but he will not go over. And so at the end of the book of Deuteronomy, we read that Moses passes away on Mount Nebo. Lo yada isha teguah Torah yom hazeh, and no one knows his burial place until this day. Probably they did not want people to know his burial place, that he might be deified. And so we have this interesting narrative about a sister and two brothers. It's quite interesting. This was written 3,500 years ago, and yet we have a very, very clear picture of their escapades in the wilderness 40 years, of their travails. These, in a way, are the three founding fathers, the Washingtons and the Jeffersons and the other founding fathers of the Jewish religion. What can we say about them? Well, we can see them, we can understand them, we can appreciate them, and we say that these are three founders of the Jewish people who had courage, who had faith, who had dedication. We read about their fears, their frustrations, the challenges they faced, the obstacles they overcame, and their love for each other, and their pettiness when they gossip about Moses. What can we say about Miriam and her two brothers? Well, she was sweet and kind and thoughtful and protecting. We can say about Aaron that he was loyal. He was by Moses' side, supporting Moses at all times. And what can we say about Moses? Never was a man so brave. he had courage, he had faith, he had options, and so the three of them passed away before they entered the Holy Land. After 40 years of wandering, they never achieved their dreams. And we can learn from this. Oftentimes we have a goal, we have an ideal, we have a dream, and we don't quite make it. And so we learn from this in the Talmud, where our rabbis tell us that uh, lo alecha hamlacha ligmor. It is not for you to complete the work, to achieve your dreams, and yet you are not free to desist from making every attempt to fulfill your goals. Amen. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi. Thank you so much. And we wish you and your family many blessings on this Shabbos. Take good care, sir. Be
Thank
well.
you very much. Thank you for your hospitality.